I'm David Reed, and this is The Engine Room. Welcome back to The Engine Room, and we have a special guest with us today, Erin. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
So, Erin, you're got a twinge of accent. I'm assuming you're from somewhere north. Where are you in the world?
I am 100% Canadian.
100%.
Yes. I'm in Calgary, Alberta.
Are you a lifetime Albertan or Calgarian? I don't even know what you call those.
No. So I grew up in Burlington, Ontario, which is just outside Toronto, which most people know, and
Yeah.
stayed there for a period of time. I did quite a bit of traveling when I did my university education. So I took an approach to do some work terms. So I worked in Newfoundland at a refinery there, which was a very interesting experience. I worked in
It's
Halifax, Nova Scotia, and
nice.
Toronto. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I worked in Toronto at a refinery for about 3 years in operations, and I didn't love it. So I took a change and I moved out west because I heard west is best, and
Oh,
took a career in the upstream here in Calgary.
so what is your job right now? What's your title?
So I'm the general manager of the Wellstream business unit for our North American region. So that means it means many things, but I'm generally responsible for activities that we do in North and South, or I'm sorry, in North America. So that would cover Alaska all the way east to Newfoundland, Canada, down to sort of the Gulf of Mexico. And then we have someone else who covers our Latin American region and further south. So I cover activities from opportunity development, market assessment, business development, all the way through project execution, delivery, and then my group also does aftermarket services. So it's very dynamic, it's
Yeah.
exciting, and there's a lot of different things which really keeps me interested.
So I would say that probably of all the groups, maybe there's maybe some a bit more distant, but Wellstream generally isn't known by everybody. You wanna tell us a bit about the organization and what they do?
We are the group that's, if you look at the flow of oil from inception all the way through to to the sales pipeline, we're at the very end,
Hmm.
finishing up, doing the last bit of separation, the polishing. So I think we're kind of the last step before things go off to the sales pipeline. So it's it's a very exciting business unit to work in. I wouldn't say it maybe gets as much attention as some of the bigger things that we do.
Yeah.
Rigs are very exciting. Rigs are they're wonderful things to do, and they get a lot of attention. We do a lot of things that tend to excite the engineers, things
Yeah.
that are centered around efficiency and optimization, but tend to be a
And
little bit more internal.
some chemistry, some various other disciplines. You are playing in the data and software side as well, right?
We do digitalization, which is really centered around optimization of operations. We don't strictly touch on chemistry, but chemistry is one of those areas where we sort of infringe upon some of those things, like getting into systems, designing glycol units with new types of um, new types of chemistry, and we do design around different types of media.
And are you so you're a chemical engineer? Is that your
Technically, I'm an
background?
environmental engineer, but I
Okay.
gravitated towards the chemical side because that tended to dominate the job prospects for me, which is how I ended up in refining.
Yeah, you like working, so that had the best opportunity. That's good. So, how did you end up there? What as a child were you drawn to anything that gave you clues that a more technical world was ahead of you, or were you motivated other ways?
I literally just picked the hardest thing that I got accepted into, and that was the engineering program at Waterloo, which was very competitive. So I thought, at the very least, I'll do the hardest thing And if I can do that and it doesn't work out, at least switching into something else would be.
Were you were you because one thing, and this is on my mind in doing the engine room as well, is that I'm looking at diversity inside the organization and seeing, how can we get better at this? Because there's definitely a leaning that isn't the way we want it. And so you were a female engineer, which we could use more of. How was that experience? I mean, growing up in the industry and coming through college into the industry and into NOV.
I think in the university days, it was seamless for me because my program was dominated by women, oddly enough. And just slightly geared towards women. The environmental program and the chemical program both tend to have higher enrollment. But I certainly saw in the rest of the programs, there was a low representation. And I think overall in the industry, it still was hovering somewhere around 25%. That never really bothered me. And it never certainly stopped me. I never really thought much of it because I could look at other programs such as nursing and say, nursing is dominated by women, or other types of programs. So I just thought it was a matter of what I'd picked. But then starting in operations, that was where things started to really rear their head, and understand that there was certain things that I was geared away from. For example, I wanted to join the fire crew at the refinery, and I had been recruited. I'm very tall and athletic, and they didn't have any female representation. And so I thought this was a cool experience. I'm going to be rappelling off, vacuum towers and doing really cool things. And I was strictly told, you cannot do that.
How did that go? Did you do it, or it just never happened?
No, I wasn't allowed. I was told, you will not do that. And the answer was not because you're a female. The answer was because if we have a fire, we want the engineers running away from the fire, not towards it. So, but I still took that very hard, and there were several examples of, where I was working during a turnaround, and the conditions were just not maybe conducive to having, you know um there just weren't the spaces. There weren't change rooms for us. There weren't. So it became readily apparent that we were just kind of ill-fitting there. And there was quite a few women in the refinery, but many of them left to go take other roles, and I think it was just a very tough environment. So my decision to leave had nothing to do with that. It was more based on that they had a very defined career path, almost that you could see your career path for the next 10 years, that they had laid out sort of a matrix and you would check the box. And that's ultimately what didn't work for me. But I think working in operations in a refining atmosphere, you have your management versus unionized, you have your, men versus women, you have just, a lack of cognitive diversity.
I don't think everyone understands this. That when you see more people like you in the mix, is inspiring, and you think, okay, great. So there's not, because the people who struggle with it, don't know they struggle. They just happen to be around people who are exactly like them, as opposed to.
You don't really, it's not really something that you'd keep in the forefront of your mind, but I think you wouldn't necessarily think you had a chance unless you see other people in those roles actively. It's not enough to say, hey, we're going to do this, or we support women. It's, this is the VP and she is, fill in the blank. But I noticed a significant proportion of females, and it was super inspiring.
It is, isn't it? It's I know Runa and the team, and I've really enjoyed kind of working around them, because it's not a subject I've ever talked to them about, you know, because you don't need to. I have a good friend and ran drilling engineering in Maersk, and he had about a 50-50 male female mix, and I asked him one day, and he was almost insulted that I asked him. That's interesting. He's like, "Are you trying to say that I'm purposely doing this?" And I was like, "No, I'm just saying that all drilling contractors are male. I mean, I don't know if I've seen it except for a relative of someone at the top getting into engineering and drilling." And he goes, "Well, we just pick the best, and it just so happens that half of them are women." And I like that. It means that you've really got to where you want to get to. But I will say his view, and if I think some of the women who work for me, and when we talk about it, I've said, well, we weren't purposely aiming at diversity. And one of my friends who we went through this said, well, I was definitely doing that on purpose. And I was like, oh, I was kind of naive to it, and I didn't really care. I'm like, these are great people. And but I did learn that people. Someone asked me once, seems like a very diverse group, and I said I don't know that we're trying, but I know that people see what's happening, and that's usually what I tell people in dealing with it, because all diversity issues are just about me, right? For everybody, like your own. How are you living your life, and how much do you understand this? And most people who are not trying to understand it then feel bad because the outcome is evident, right? So if I'm not trying to understand what it's like for you to go through things, I'm not going to change. I'm not even going to be tuned into it. Not that I have any problem. I'm just not tuned into what it looks like and feels like for someone else.
I read an article in HBR and became aware of this concept of the hiring bias and how damaging it can be. And when I was building a team, I knew I didn't want to do that. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I did was I could see we were diversified. We were diversified in age, we were diversified in gender, and we had a number of visible minorities in the team. So I think we were okay there. But this concept of cognitive diversity as well is everybody's thinking alike. That's You're still no better
Right.
off, even if everyone looks
Yeah.
different. So we did sort of a personality survey, and then I
Mm.
started getting an idea of what kind of personalities am I gravitating towards, and it's I'm trying to hire me because
That's right.
I
That's
like me
excellent. Yeah.
and I'm comfortable with me. So
I
trying
understand
to,
me.
yeah, very, very comfortable. So I had to learn to get out of that comfort zone. And it's not about who I like. It's not about, it's not about who's going to fit within the group and who matches the culture. It really is about what type of personality and what type of thinking do we need to fit, that particular role. And that's going to be different for a salesperson versus, a quality person versus, whatever role. But it was really trying to understand the fit of the role and
Yeah.
who that would be. So I think it really helped me to understand, like, as a group we sort of converged on a number of, we'll say, like, personality traits, and that led us to develop a list of, as a group we are going to collectively have blind spots, and we need to be aware of what are the things that we're not going to do very well. So it was a really interesting exercise, I think, for people personally to learn a little bit about themselves, and for me as a manager to figure out, how do I manage these people? What do they
Yeah.
personally need from me? Because I can't, you want to treat everybody equally, but you can't treat them equally. You have to treat them as individuals.
Yeah, that's how we drive our careers. Is that we do things, it works, we do it again. We work with people, it works for us, we do it again. So we're always trying to avoid risk, and all of that feels like risk, but it's critical that we question ourselves in this area. And I do believe more diverse leadership helps, because I was in a conference, and someone who was an ex-employee, which was pretty difficult. It was a women's conference, and they came to the mic and said, I was told to get out of the field by my supervisor. I said she said one of the companies up here, which I was the only one that had any field representation. So it was pretty sure it was me. So I got told to stay out of the field because women don't belong in the field. And she goes, how do you respond to that? Which the three operators quickly held their mics down. I said, I guess that's me. And my answer could only be, I said, the only answer is more and more diversity in leadership, because it isn't unless you understand it that you start to do something about it. And otherwise you just make those assumptions, right? That this is just I mean, I know early drilling rigs, I asked Julie Pierce, who'd come through the Schlumberger system, which means you're going to work on rigs, whether you like it or not. I said, how did it feel being on rigs? And she went through that era where there's a lot of rigs that there is no place for women. They have to section off 4 bunks if you're the one woman, because because it's all mixed showers, or 8 bunks or whatever it was, and it just says you don't belong. And that's always been on my mind. And you go into some of the modern drilling rigs, and they've changed that where there's independent beds and showers and things that you have to do to make that work. And so it's a progression, but it's a long journey. But I think it's valuable. So that's really good advice and good work you've done there. So that I'm glad you shared that. Um, I like this subject. I like that this is where we're going. But we're almost out of time. So these are fairly short interviews. So I'm going to ask you if someone was to call you to ask for help for anything in the company, what's the best type of subject for them to reach out for help on?
General career advice. And I'm less likely to tell someone what to do, but I think good at walking them through options, things to think, how to think about the problem, how to approach it, and how to get comfortable with asking themselves those really uncomfortable questions. Um, that question to say, am I in the right place? And maybe the second thing is when people get really, really stressed out and they're having just an atrocious day, somehow I quite often end up connecting with those people and being that sort of that voice of reason to walk them through, like, how did you get here? How are you feeling right now? And really, I think a reassurance that it's okay to take time for, well, and we talk a lot about self-care, but when we get to a point where it's just too much, and I think, I reached that point, and I think I was pretty open with people at one point. Things were just, there was a lot going on, and I found, a brick wall and really ran into it. And I learned a lot from that, and I learned to be really open and share with people about, we start to be fairly counterproductive when we try to do too much, and giving people the comfort that, you know, knowing when to step back because it's actually better for the company and it's better for us, it's better for everyone when we can see those limits coming.
Yeah, I think parental styles are, or healthy parental styles, because we can't assume that all parenting is good, but I think for leadership, that's probably when we've done leadership training, it's really self awareness and teaching people how to self regulate and understand deeper, harder questions, but it does affect performance. So I think that's you'll have at least 5,000 calls once this goes out. Because I think people really need this, and we don't talk about it enough. Self care, but I think I really enjoy the pulse survey work that HR kind of puts out, because we pore over them here and have conversations and worry about the numbers, and how do we get the best performance and the happiest people, and I think that's really great that's in your skill set, because I think it's rare and we need more of it. So I appreciate that a lot. So anyway, that's it. You made it through. So thanks for your time, Erin, and hopefully we can have you back on the show sometime.
We would love that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching.